session 90, Genesis 32. Okay, verse 1. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. Very interesting. Verse 2. When Jacob saw them, all right, he saw now the angels of God. I'm not sure exactly what he saw. He doesn't explain to us, but he says, this is God's host. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Now, Mahanaim was situated between Gilead. Remember, Jacob just came from Gilead, from the heap of testimony. So Mahanaim is situated between Gilead and the river Jabbok. Jacob is on his way to Jabbok. Remember, he has to go over the river to go back into his father's land, into his father's country. But he also has to cross the river to face his biggest fear, Esau, his brother. But here in between the Mount Gilead, the heap of testimony, and the Jabbok River where he has to go over, he's meeting an army of God. God's army of angels, God's host. Now, Yahuwah is also called Yahuwah Tsefaot. And that means Lord of hosts. In your English translation, it would say the Lord of hosts. You might have seen that before. Now, Yeshua is the king of all the angels. He is the mighty warrior, the one with a two-edged sword in his hand. He is the leader of the host of Yahuwah, of the armies of Yahuwah. So let's just remember that Gilead in Hebrew, was in the Strong's H1567. And that meant heap of testimony. And that is where Laban and Jacob made a covenant. And now the Hebrew for Mahanaim, where Jacob is meeting these angels, that is in the Strong's H4264. And it means an encampment, a traveler or troops, hence an army. Whether it's a literal army of soldiers, or a figurative army of dancers, or angels, or stars, or sacred courts. Sacred is holy. It's got to do with a camp, like a double camp, because the root word of Mahanaim has got to do with a double camp, Machanayim, and that means a double camp. And we'll get to that now. It is amazing to understand what this host, this camp, this double camp that Jacob is meeting. Remember, Jacob is representing Israel, the bride. And there's a double camp of God's angels that's meeting him as he comes from Laban on his way to Esau. All right, but what's interesting for me is that in Greek, the Greek translation for Mahanaim is dunamis. And we all know that has to do with the word of power, dynamic power, dunamis, power. This is the power that's in the encampment of the angels of God. All right. So this word, Mahanaim, is found in one more place. Right? I found this word in Song of Solomon's chapter 6. Here Solomon is speaking to his bride, the Shulamite woman. But in the prophetic, this is the heavenly bridegroom speaking to his earthly bride. So we always look at the level of realistic meaning, the plain literal meaning, but then we always look at the hidden, mysterious prophetic meaning as well. Right, so let's look at what the bridegroom is saying to the bride. The bride starts in verse 2 and she says, "My beloved has gone down into his garden to the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens on the fruit, and to gather lilies." Oh, this is all such beautiful prophetic language. Verse 3, "I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feeds among the lilies." And now the bridegroom starts talking in verse 13 of chapter 6, Songs of Solomon's. And the bridegroom says to the bride, "Return, return, O Shulamite. Return, return, he says it 4 times, that we may look upon you. What will you see in the Shulamite? All right, so if the beloved is the bridegroom, and that is Yeshua, and the Shulamite represents Israel, the bride, right? And yeah, just like in Deuteronomy 4, Yahweh said, I will scatter you, but you will return to me in the last days. Here, the bridegroom is calling the bride to return to him, and he's saying that he wants to look at her. And what will he and the rest of the world see when they look at the Shulamite? Okay, let me read it to you. It is amazing. Listen to this. Song of Solomon 6 verse 13. What will we see in the Shulamite? As it were, a company of 2 armies. Oh, amazing. First of all, you know by now that there's 2 houses in the nation of Israel. We've got the house of Judah and we've got the house of Israel, right? And both of them has to return to Yahuwah in the last days to be made one again, one bride in the hand of the Messiah. So besides the fact that when the bridegroom looks at his bride, he sees a company of 2 armies. He sees 2 houses. He sees the prodigal son and the son that stayed home. Right? But besides that, just like in the time of Jacob in Genesis 32, he was no longer fleeing from Laban, but listen, Laban didn't, it wasn't a nice situation. So he came out of a bad situation and is on his way to another bad situation. And he's in the wilderness. He's come out of Egypt. He's on his way back to the promised land, right? Not physical Egypt in the spiritual. He came out of the idolater's house of Laban and is now in the wilderness and is on his way to go over the Jabbok River back into the promised land, but also to face Esau. And here, Jacob, as representing the bride, Israel, God is sending him his host, his army of angels, which is in the Hebrew Mahanim, which means a double camp. And here, the same bridegroom, Yeshua, is looking at his bride, telling her to return back to him, looking at her and seeing a company of 2 armies, because it is just so beautiful. God doesn't want his bride to travel on this road alone. It is just amazing. Because if we look at the word Shulamite, which is now representing in the book of Song of Solomon, it's representing the bride. In the Hebrew, that is H7759, and that is from the root word shalom, and it means peaceful, right? The Shulamite, it's an epithet of Solomon's queen, Shulamite, but the root word is shalom, and it means to be safe in mind and in body and in estate. Estate is like your house, your residence. But figuratively, it means, shalom means to be made complete. Beautiful. So the bridegroom is telling his bride to return to him, right? What does the people see when they look at the bride of the Messiah? What is behind the bride? A company of 2 armies. And now this company of 2 armies that Jacob is meeting in this specific area, as he is between Gilead, the heap of testimony, on his way to the Jabbok River, he's meeting this company of 2 armies, and I'm sure this is just giving him that support that he needs, because I'm sure that he is very afraid. Right. Why is he afraid? And isn't it amazing? He's on his way to the Jabbok River. Listen to this now in the Hebrew, because Jabbok in the Hebrew is H2999, and it means to be pouring forth or to be poured out, to be made empty or to be emptied out. Jacob is afraid. He just made a covenant with Laban, so Laban didn't hurt him. He fled from Laban, and he's now returning, coming from Gilead, where there was a heap of testimony. The power of God, Dunamis, the army of angels, the double camp, the company of 2 armies, is meeting him at this place, and he calls it Mahanim. because he, as the bride, is now having these two armies with him. And when he goes to the Jabbok River, where he encounters the angel of Yahuwah, with whom he wrestles, right? And he gets his name changed, which is a huge prophetic thing that's going to happen. He overcomes his fear of Esau because God promises that he will be with him. But he needs to empty himself out at the Jabbok River, wrestling with God before going back into the promised land. So he's coming from Gilead, the heap of testimony. He's meeting at Mahanim, the army of God, the two camps of God. And he's going to the Jabbok River, where he is going to be emptied out. The bride of Messiah will empty herself out, just like Jacob, from all false religion, from all fear, and she will cross over. Remember, Hivrit, Hebrew, cross over, just like Abraham. She will cross over the Jabbok River, the river that will force her to meet with a God, to wrestle with him, to have her name changed, and to empty herself out. The Jabbok River will force her to Jabbok. Jabbok is to empty yourself out. So God doesn't expect her to travel alone on this journey, but he gives her two companies that is behind her. And the two companies of his army, because there are two houses in God's kingdom. So two companies is needed because Israel, Jacob, is the 12 tribes and they are divided into two houses. She will overcome all her fear and the enemy's attacks because of the heap of testimony that she is carrying in her heart. Listen, what are we busy with every day when you listen to these Bible studies? Aren't you gathering heaps and heaps of testimonies from every page of the Old Testament? Aren't you carrying that around inside of you? Meeting like the Shulamite, being completed and being in shalom, meeting God's army in the wilderness, and Ivrit, Hebrew, crossing over the Jabbok River, where you need to be emptied out of your fear and your doubt and your any doctrines that's not part of his testimony. And you are carrying the testimony with you into the promised land. Beautiful. Revelation 12 verse 11. And they overcame the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, with an army of angels behind us, and with the word of the testimony inside of us. We will cross over the Jabbok River, empty ourselves, and be filled up by him. Israel, Jacob, met two armies of angels in Mahanim when he came from the heap of testimony, Gilead, and he emptied himself at the Jabbok River. And now, what is going to happen here at the Jabbok River? Here, where Jacob is going to cross over to meet his brother, who he's very afraid of. He's very scared to meet his brother. But he's going to ivrit over the emptying of yourself. He's going to get over it. People will sometimes say, if you say, oh, I'm so afraid, they will say, man, just get over it. I agree. Come on, Israel. Go over the Jabbok River. Wrestle with God. Just like we're going to study when Jacob wrestles with the angel of Yahuwah. Get your name changed. Become part of Israel, like Jacob's name was changed to Israel. And go into the promised land. We follow the army of God. We follow like Eliezer brought Rebekah back. She followed Eliezer, the Ruach HaKodesh, through the same wilderness. Listen, Rebekah went the same journey from Laban's house to Isaac. But she followed the Ruach. And here Jacob is. And he's afraid. But he remembers. Because the angel of God appeared to him a few nights ago, remember? When he told Leah and Rachel about it. And he reminded him that he is the God that met him at Bethel. He is that same God. And he will be with him. And he will take him back to the promised land. And his seed will be the nation of Yahuwah. So it's beautiful, and this is prophetic for the bride of today. At this stage, the whole world is in a panic because of everything that's happening, but we know the prophecies of the Bible. We know what's lying ahead for Israel. We are going to get to Joseph taken into Egypt as a slave, and eventually all of Israel will be slaves, and there'll be plagues and pestilences, but they will come out of it. We know what's lying ahead. Just like physically in our lives right now in this world, there's a lot of things lying ahead for us, and the whole world is in a panic because of this virus. But we have so much more. We have heaps and heaps of testimony, Gilead. We are meeting God's army. We are meeting the witnesses on every page of the Bible, and we know we are not in this wilderness alone. We are not traveling alone. And we are looking to go into the promised land. We are not doing that on a physical level. We know that is all prophetic for the kingdom to come. When all the pestilences has run its course on this earth, and we will finally meet our Messiah. And just here, I would like to remind you, if any one of you haven't listened to the post I did on YouTube, CV, coronavirus, end time judgment or not, it's on YouTube. Just maybe go and have a listen to that as well. All right, we'll continue tomorrow. We're quickly going to look at Esau, who lives in the land of Edom, before we continue with what happened with the amazing thing that's going to happen between the angel of Yahuwah and Jacob at the river Yabok. May you have a blessed, unfearful day.